Hi everyone, it's Dr. Kate from the network. We have got the inspirational Alyssa Carson joining us today. She's being interviewed by two of our amazing students, Alexander and Sahana. Alyssa will be answering some very difficult space questions and also talking to us about the latest happenings in space and her role at Jacobs in international space relations.
Hi, my name is Sahana, and I'm a student at the network. And I am so honored to be part of this interview today. And I'm just really, really excited. I have my own talk show on YouTube, so I'm just really, honored to be here.
Hi, I'm Alexander. I'm also a student on the network. I am also very excited for this interview today, and I love space and astronomy.
Yeah, well, I'm glad to be here.
It is amazing that you have accomplished so much at such a young age. A few of your accomplishments that I've come upon is that you've attended Space Camp 7 times, Space Academy 3 times, and Robotics Academy 1 time. And you are the first person to complete all of the NASA space camps in the world, including Space Camp Turkey and Space Camp Canada.
Alyssa, could you tell us a bit about your internship at Jacobs?
Yeah, sure. So my internship at Jacobs is something that's relatively new. I just joined with them in December, so I've been with them for a few months. But Jacobs is one of NASA's largest contractors. They're a really big company. They do a whole bunch of stuff, but I guess more specifically, I am on their international space relations team, which means that we focus on building Jacobs partnerships with space agencies all over the world and space companies all over the world. So it's been really, really fascinating to really kind of learn more about space globally and really see, what's Polish up to, with space recently. I don't know, but I guess I'm going to find out. So it's been really interesting to kind of see that mix of what those different agencies are doing. And also it's been giving me a little bit of an insight into more of like the business and political side of space. Definitely not the area that I'm probably going to be working in, but it's still fascinating to see how it all runs behind the scenes.
Interesting. What are your thoughts about the upcoming James Webb Space Telescope launch?
Yeah, I think that it's going to be really, really exciting. I think it's one of the most exciting things that's happening this year in terms of space. I feel like we've been hearing about the James Webb Telescope for so long. So it's going to be exciting to actually see it happen and to really start getting some of those images back. Of course, that's the most exciting part with telescopes is actually being able to see what we can see with them. But yeah, I think it's a really nice idea to finally have an upgrade from what we have from Hubble, from all of our old telescopes, and finally have something fresh and new up in space. So yeah, I'm just really excited to have some of that newer technology. I do know that I'm trying to remember the name of it, but they're already thinking of another telescope. So who knows? We haven't even gotten James Webb up yet, but I promise there's even more ideas in the works. So it's pretty crazy.
That's amazing. So my next question would be, what role would you like more people to pursue in the space industry?
Yeah, I think that in general, for like the everyday person, I think that there's so much that we can do in space and really kind of realize about space. I do think that like nowadays, like the everyday person is like slightly disconnected from space because it's not something that we like see every day. It's not something we're really exposed to. But I think like in the future, we're slowly going to become more connected with space because it's such an important part of our lives, an important part of how we learn, develop new technologies and everything. But I think one of the biggest things is that how big the space industry is. I do think that we can kind of get caught up in some of like the same few jobs. So like if you think about the space industry, you're probably going to think scientist, engineer, and astronaut. But like what else is there to space? Whereas there's so much more past that. There are, spacesuit designers, rocket engine testers, there's psychologists, there's journalists, there's people who have to design the food that goes up to space. Let's say an astronaut really wants a piece of chocolate cake. Can we send them chocolate cake? Like these are necessities for space. And so there really is a lot that goes into play, and every single role is just as important about the others. And so I do think that every person really can play a part in space if they have the interest. And yeah, in general, I don't think we do anything in space without public interest. We're not gonna go to Mars if the general public doesn't want to see us go to Mars. And so even just sharing a little bit of interest really does help the space industry.
Wow, that's That's so cool. How would you like the future to be integrated alongside space exploration? And what's the ideal?
Yeah, I think that in the future, we're hoping for space, like I said, to kind of become a little bit more of a norm. I do think that we're on our way to that, kind of with the idea of commercial space, space tourism. Space tourism has several ideas, of course, for people to be able to go to space, but really the impact of space tourism that they're trying to have is most astronauts, when they come back from space, they're kind of like changed in a way. They have this new perspective because when you go to space, you can see the planet. It's fragile. We're very small. You can see how thin our atmosphere. You can really see how fragile we are of our planet. There's no country borders. There's no lines separating all of us. It really is just like one home planet. And so that's kind of a perspective that's really impacted so many of our astronauts. And it's kind of a perspective we would like to give to a lot of people. And so that's kind of the big idea with space tourism, is that people would be able to connect to that side of space. They would be able to see how fragile we are, how vast space is, how kind of give them just more of that concept. And so I think that's kind of like the hopes for space travel. And then, of course, with the idea of going to Mars, eventually the idea is having some sort of civilization on Mars as well. And so, who knows, maybe one day going to Mars will be the same as flying to a country, go to Mars for vacation. Who knows? We'd be able to kind of bounce back and forth. So with that, of course, space would have to be super integrated into our lives at that point.
Interesting. What do you think of Oumuamua, the first interstellar object found in our solar system? Do you believe that there are more interstellar objects in our solar system that we haven't yet discovered?
Yeah, I do think that there's a lot that we haven't discovered. I mean, of course, space and the universe is so big. It's really hard to ever say that like we found it all. I don't think we'll ever be able to say that. Of course, there's some stuff that, could be much further, not necessarily in our solar system, but yeah, I totally think that there's a possibility for any sort of new discovery for us to make, whether it is some sort of interstellar object or otherwise. But yeah, I really do think that that's kind of like the fun part about space, is that you're never really done exploring, you're never done learning. Even about our own solar system, we have planets, we've sent something to every planet, we've sent something to the sun. We still don't really know that much about all of them. And so, yeah, I do think that that's kind of like the fun part. So I enjoy some of the mystery in it.
What are your thoughts on Martian light pollution caused by Martian bases? Should we take measures on Mars to prevent the ravages of light pollution on astronomy, or would the cost of designing anti-light pollution produced bases not be worth it?
Yeah, it's going to be very fascinating having a colony on Mars, and it really depends on the route we decide to go with Mars. So, for example, if we were to take the idea of terraforming Mars, that would involve thickening up Mars's atmosphere. So, with a thicker atmosphere, it's going to kind of be harder to, see stars. Mars is very beautiful at the moment, but that's because it has a very thin atmosphere. And of course, we wouldn't necessarily be able to survive there. There's pressure problems, there's only carbon dioxide, a lot of issues. So it really kind of depends, what kind of colony we would want to have. If we wanted to completely terraform Mars, then yeah, that's something that we believe that we'll be able to do. But of course, that's going to change kind of the composition and idea of Mars a little bit. But I think kind of the goal with Mars, or some of the benefits of doing that, is that one, we're learning a lot more about Mars, and there's a lot of connections between Earth and Mars. If we clean up Mars's atmosphere, then we can clean up Earth's atmosphere. If we can grow food on Mars, then we can grow food on areas of Earth that maybe are struggling with agriculture. And so there's really a lot of connections. Mars just pushes us to really think out of the box and think differently. And then also, having multiple resources. Let's say we were living on Earth and Mars. If in the future population continues to rise, we would have two places to live. We would have less strain on our resources here on Earth. Of course, a lot of these are very long-term ideas, but it's all about, hopefully setting up future generations to have that better life than if we were just to kind of like keep them trapped here and force them to, like, I don't know, fight for food or something.
That's very interesting. One of my questions are, what are your thoughts on the Lucy mission?
Yeah, I think that really there are so many ideas and different kinds of missions in space right now. I think that I think really the biggest struggle is trying to accomplish all of our big ideas. Of course, like we want to go to the moon, we want to go to Mars, and then we also have ideas like going to comets and asteroids and, exploring that level of space as well. And so I think that eventually, we are going to like achieve all of it. I think we just have so many ideas in space. I mean, I love the idea of kind of like visiting an asteroid or trying to, gain like a little bit more information about them. So yeah, I think that it's all going to be a success. And like I said, asteroids have their own level of benefit, whether that's more resources or more whatever we can find with them. But yeah, I think that space just has so much going on, honestly.
Of course. Yeah. That's really, really interesting. And yeah. So my next question is, did you ever feel like giving up on your journey?
I think to an extent there was not necessarily giving up. I always wanted to do something within the space industry. Definitely my interests in terms of space have changed over time. I mean, like, I'll be honest, there's areas of space that I don't really find as interesting as others. You can, like I said, there's a lot going on. You can't love everything. But there's more areas that I find super fascinating. And so I do think that like over time, the different areas of space that I've really loved or wanted to go into has changed. When I was deciding what I wanted to study, that kind of changed a little bit. And even now, even though I'm kind of decided on astrobiology, it's still a huge range of options. Do I want to focus on physics or do I want to focus on biology? Would I want to study plants or planets or bacteria or, anything in between? There's still always options when it comes to space. And so I do think that there have been like challenges in terms of like keeping up and, wanting to kind of figure out what I want to do. And then also at the same time with some of the different research campaigns and experiences that I've had, there's definitely been very difficult moments in terms of like wanting to give up or, just trying to keep up. A lot of the different stuff that I've done through Project Possum has been with people a lot older than I am. And so, whether it was taking a class and, not understanding anything or even doing some of like the physical research campaigns, I had to, for example, like during the water survival training, I had to watch, a 35-year-old retired military guy struggle to do what we were supposed to do. And then they looked at me to go do it. And I was like, if he's struggling to do it, I sure as heck can't do it. So there's definitely been a lot of levels of struggle and doubt there. But it's definitely for me all about like pushing myself to kind of do it the first time and get me past it. So luckily they were all there cheering me on. It took me a while. I did do it eventually, but yeah, it sometimes, it just kind of needs that little boost to get me there.
Interesting. When humanity uses nuclear reactors on Mars to generate power for colonists, what do you believe we will do with the nuclear reactors that are no longer effective in producing electricity?
Yeah, I think a lot of the different ideas in terms of how we are going to kind of establish Mars is still very up in the air, honestly. I do think that, of course, like colonization or using nuclear reactors and stuff is something that like we would want to get to. I do think that we're possibly like a while away from there and like we may like come up with a new technology that could be better. And I think that is something that we're kind of like hopeful for. I think that some of the first missions to Mars aren't necessarily going to be, okay, we're here, now let's colonize. I think some of the first missions are going to be in the sense of, let's learn as much as we can about Mars to see, one, how possible all these big ideas are, and to see how possible and how realistic they are, and also how long are they actually going to take to become a reality. Initially when we had the ideas of terraforming and colonizing, we were like, we think it may take about 300 years to fully terraform Mars into a place just like Earth. But is that realistic? Is it really only going to take 300 years to completely change the makeup of an entire planet? Some of those things may take longer than we assume. So it's kind of like, I think, obviously there's going to be different ideas on how we do stuff once we get to Mars, but I don't know. I'm kind of more hopeful that we'll have something like better and some sort of better technology to use for once we actually get to the point of colonizing.
Fascinating. What are your thoughts on solar scale technology? Do you believe that it could be used on a larger scale to potentially transport humans to distant planets, or will that be reserved for small satellites?
Yeah, I think solar is something that's going to become more important in space or more widely used. Really in space, we don't really use that much fuel once we get to space. The majority of fuel that we use is to get us off of the planet. So typically, if you were going to Mars, let's say, you would have like one spurts of fuel, and then you're going, and you're not going to stop. You have little thrusters that may adjust your trajectory to make sure you're going in the right direction. But for the most part, we really don't use that much fuel or really other resources. Really, solar is probably one of the primary things that we use. So I think it's going to like become even more integrated in our daily lives to space. We already know that it's probably more effective in space anyway than using fuel, because fuel is probably just more wasteful to just try to do it when we are not really fighting against anything. There's no force, there's no really reason to use it when we can use solar. So yeah, I do think that it's going to become even more integrated, and definitely on much large scale ideas more than satellites. I mean, of course, we use it on the International Space Station. I mean, we have huge solar panels there, which play such an important role. And kind of some of our ideas with actually getting to Mars is we would almost have like a mini International Space Station, because who wants to be cooped up in a little capsule for like 6 months? That's a little long. So we have like different ideas of maybe trying to give the astronauts more space. Again, that would have their own like solar power and aspects to that to kind of give them more of a comfortable living environment. So I do think that's going to continue to be used, and possibly on a wider scale.
Wow, that's really, really interesting. When you were younger, did you only focus on space or did you learn other subjects? If so, what was your favorite subject?
Yeah, I definitely was involved with so much besides space. I mean, of course, space was like a big part of my life. I was interested in space, did space camps, but I also played competitive soccer for 10 years. I did dance and ballet and Girl Scouts and piano and anything and everything you could imagine. I was involved in anything my friends were in, pretty much. I enjoyed it all. I really did like soccer for a while. It just became too time consuming to travel for soccer and travel for space. So that was just a little too much on the schedule. But yeah, no, I really did like that. And then in general, as far as like other interests, I mean, I was always interested in other things, and even, speaking and a lot of the different things that I still have in my life are now much bigger interests than I ever thought they were going to be. But being able to almost become more of like a science communicator has definitely been integrated to be such a big part of my life. But I do think that having that balance and doing so many other things besides space helped in keeping me from not being bored of space, if that makes sense. I wasn't always talking about space. So when I did have the opportunity to do something, I was excited, because this was like my special dedicated time to actually learn something new and exciting about something that I was interested in. But I feel like if I was talking about space every single day, all the time, I'd probably be bored of it. I probably would be sick of talking about space. But because, I have like that balance, and it's the same, once you like kind of get a job, you don't want to always be working or always not be working. You find that balance. You're able to kind of figure out to do something that maybe you're passionate about, or do something that you're interested in, but also just relax and just have a nice time. And so I definitely think that balance was really important to also getting me a little bit to where I am.
Yes,
Interesting.
definitely. I definitely agree that with that. My next question would be, how do you handle fame, and do you sometimes feel like you weren't the center of attention?
I don't know. I guess I don't really see myself as like famous. I don't really think of it that way, I guess. I mean, honestly, like especially like on social media, like the numbers don't really process. Like I just kind of like post whatever I want to post, and if people don't like it, then like, oh well, sorry, I don't know. Like I just kind of post what I'm interested in and what I like doing. But no, I never really like put that much thought into it. I mean, I love being able to like have my platform to be able to speak to kids all over the world and hopefully give them advice and inspire them, and also, share what I'm doing. But yeah, I guess I don't necessarily see it in the same sense as like fame or like a celebrity in a way. I feel like I'm just, just someone giving advice, which isn't, I don't know, they just don't really match up to be the same in my head. But yeah, it's definitely been really interesting. I mean, I've definitely had a lot of fun with the different experiences, whether that's working with different brands or, sharing different ideas. And I think really the best part about all of that, I mean, of course it's fun and all, but I think that working with some large brands like Nike and Olay, the best part about it is that we're getting more exposure about space to the everyday people. If once big brands like Nike and Olay start talking about space, then like someone looking at that brand or looking at those products are now kind of thinking about space a little more, and we're kind of integrating space more into our everyday lives. And so I think that's really like the best part about it. I mean, trying on fun clothes is cool too. So I like that part.
Fascinating. What are your thoughts on extracting helium-3 from lunar regolith to power fusion reactors? Will we only use such reactors on the moon, or will we go for the process of bringing it back to Earth for use?
Yeah, I think that the idea of extracting helium-3 from the moon has been talked about for a while, for a good while, actually. That was one of the primary reasons why we initially wanted to go back to the moon, because so many people were so hype about extracting helium-3. That was like a whole thing for a while. I do think that it kind of died down a little bit, when looking at going back to the moon. We don't really like talk about that side of the moon as much anymore. We're like, oh, go back to the moon to get ready to go to Mars to send the first woman to the moon. So yeah, I think that's like another thing that's probably going to like resurface in like a little bit once we're more comfortable going back to the moon. But I feel like it's something that would also be relatively soon. I mean, we're talking about going back to the moon in the next few years, in the late 2020s. And so if we're able to do that, then like if we wanted to start mining, it would be something that's a possibility. I think the hardest part about that is, I think in terms of mining, it's going to have, humans on the moon helping doing something. And I feel like we're definitely at a point where we're able to do more than one thing in space, but I don't think we're able to do a whole lot at one time. So I think that's maybe something that maybe more of like a commercial company may have to like focus on, to really get going. And then I guess it would be up to them what they want to do in terms of keeping it on the moon or bringing it back here. But I don't know. To me, it definitely sounds more like a commercial project.
What are your thoughts on constructing a Dyson sphere around the sun? Do you believe humanity will ever be able to construct one capable of collecting 1% or more of the energy the sun emits?
Um, I mean, I guess it's possible. I guess in the realm of things, like anything is possible. I mean, it's true. The sun has so much energy that we don't necessarily use, and ideally, if we could tap into it, could really power so much. Yeah, I mean, I don't want to say that we can't do it. I don't necessarily see us doing it super soon, but I think it's an awesome idea if we're able to kind of use some of that power, because it's been there for so long that it kind of sucks that we're not able to use it yet. So yeah, again, to me, like a lot of those like crazy ideas really do sound like just like commercial projects. And I think that as the private industry builds more, I think that we're going to be able to start doing a lot of more of those projects like simultaneously.
Wow, that's very fascinating. If you could go back in time to change one thing that happened on your journey, what would you change?
Um, that's an interesting question. I don't know if I would like have something that necessarily changed. I've really enjoyed a lot of the stuff I've done. Like there's been nothing that was like, oh my gosh, that sucked. I mean, I guess I find ways to like enjoy all the different stuff that I've done. I mean, I guess in terms of like traveling, like we've had bad days. I got locked in a train station with no bathroom for like many hours overnight. Ideally that it would be better if that didn't happen, or stuff like that. But I guess like overall in like the different experience that I've had, there was never anything that like I regretted doing. I've definitely enjoyed everything that I've done so far. I think it's all been really fun. I think that in the month of May coming up, I'm going to be flying with the Thunderbirds, which if you don't know, they do very like flight shows. So they like fly very close together. They do a lot of tricks. But I have someone else who's a science communicator in the industry, and she also recently flew with them. She's making me second guess wanting to fly with them because she said that she threw up a little bit. They pulled like 9 Gs on their flight. And so, yeah, I don't know. I might regret that one. I don't know. We'll see. I'm still gonna do it, but I'm now scared. The most G's I've done is 4, so 9 is quite it's a lot. It's just a lot. So I'll keep you guys posted if I regret doing that.
Definitely. Did you ever feel like you missed out on things that other people your age were doing?
Yeah, I definitely don't think that I missed out on any part of like a normal childhood. I think that I was really able to kind of juggle whatever was more important to me at that time. I guess sometimes I was met with, did I want to do something towards space or did I want to, do this school thing? But I think that, I was really able to think, okay, do I really care that much about that school thing? Is that really going to make a big difference? Or, or maybe I really did want to do it. And so I think I've been able to kind of like work around that and try to just really know what I wanted to do and what was like more important to me. And we just tried to make it work as good as possible. I mean, for example, there was this dance. It was something I really, really wanted to go to. So the biggest problem was that I had a speech that morning, but the speech was like 4 hours away from like my hometown. So like we went that morning, gave the speech, said really quick goodbyes. And then my dad drove relatively quick, within the limit. And I got changed in the car. I did my makeup in the car. I did everything in the car. And then like we pulled up to the house and like everyone was taking photos and I was there for photos. And then we left and went to the dance and like that was that. And so I think that, on not only just like picking and choosing what was good, but it was also awesome that my dad was, willing to try to put in the effort to, help me do what I wanted to do. So that was awesome to have.
Interesting. Do you believe it's plausible within our lifetimes we'll start attempting to do some form of terraforming on Mars?
Um, yeah, I do think that within our lifetime we'll have some ideas. I think after, a couple first missions to Mars, we're gonna have an idea of or more of an idea of what we want to do. And so I think that, after that we'll be able to maybe start developing those technologies, start doing whatever with Mars. I think for me, what I think that's going to happen is I don't think we're ever going to be able to colonize Mars until the idea of going to Mars seems less intimidating. You can't go up to an everyday person right now and be like, hey, do you want to colonize, go live on Mars for the rest of your life? It's a 6-month journey there. And like, that's just terrifying. No one's going to do that. No one's just going to be like, heck yeah. I mean, I guess maybe some people. But we do know that we already have the technology to reduce that time from 6 months to 6 weeks with plasma engines. So the mission to Mars would be a lot shorter. Again, if you go up to someone and, tell them it's going to be a 6-week journey, they may be like, still no. But I think, as technology gets faster and let's say we can go between Earth and Mars in 6 days, that's way less intimidating because the idea of coming back is there, like if things just like hit the fan, you're like, I can just like run back to Earth. So I think that like we won't be able to like fully get like the general public and like everyone on board in terms of going to Mars and colonizing Mars until just Mars seems way less intimidating. Right now, Mars is just like the most extreme thing we can like say and think about because it sounds crazy because like we haven't done it and it's not something that is like within our norm. And so I think that kind of terraforming and colonizing Mars will get there once like our technology is there to make it shorter because it just won't seem as intimidating and it will just kind of feel a little bit more normal. I mean, 6 days is still a heck of a trip for like someone who's not used to that, but I mean, at least it's better than 6 months.
Do you believe that Mars should be reserved for scientific exploration, or could it both be used for scientific exploration and the mining industry to use its resources and potentially bring them back to Earth?
Yeah, I think that Mars is going to be used for a mix of the two. I mean, our goal with Mars, I think when we talk about colonizing Mars, there's some people who think that like we're just running away from all of our problems on Earth and just running to Mars and, forgetting about Earth, which is not really the main idea. But also, we're not just trying to go to Mars mind, take everything, and then just like go back to Earth. That's also not the idea. So I think it's going to be like a mix of the two. We want to find that balance to where like we are like civilly living on both, because like that's what's going to give us the most opportunity. And really the whole idea with wanting to have the idea of colonizing Mars is because one day humans are going to have to figure that out. Eventually the solar system will go. We know how solar systems work in space. The sun stops burning fuel. The sun's gonna burn out. Our solar system isn't going to thrive. So eventually, of course, this is forever from now, so no worries. But eventually humans will need to have that capability to go to a new planet, to learn how to colonize there, to learn how to like pop up a tent, I guess, and just start living. And so Mars is really that first kind of baby step in teaching us how that process works. So I think that's why it's going to have to be a balance, because we're not necessarily trying to learn how to just go somewhere, mine everything, and then like skedaddle. We need to like learn how to go there, establish a colony, because those are the skills that we will need in the future, and that future generations will eventually need when, once we become like the Star Wars people, zooming through the galaxy. Eventually they'll need those skills. But so I definitely think it's going to be the balance of the two in terms of living. But of course we're going to use the resources that are there for living there. So yeah, I definitely think it'll just be a mix.
Wow, that's very, very interesting. Can you tell me about your time at Project Possum? Any memorable / funny moments that come to mind?
Yeah, everything within Project Possum has been really amazing. So Project Possum is pretty much a citizen science research organization. It's a whole bunch of everyday people who, in our free time, we come together and do different research campaigns, have good times, talk about space, I guess. Sometimes it's other sciences as well. But yeah, it's been really, really cool because it's such an awesome community of people from all over the world who kind of share this interest. But yeah, a lot of just really the fun research campaigns and having some of this real life experience has been great, whether that's microgravity flights, the water survival training, working with different types of spacesuits, gaining those different experiences have been great. It's definitely fun because we're able to have fun, rent an Airbnb, all hang out together, and then also like do our flights. Definitely something that was awesome was that we all went to where was it? Somewhere in northern Canada. It was like the high level Canada. It's like population like 10. But like we went there and we like stayed at this bed and breakfast, and then we had different missions. Like during the night, which was a lot of fun because we were all like in a house together, and our flights were at like 4 a.m. because pretty much the goal of our missions were we were flying in this aircraft called a Mooney. It was like tricked out, and we were trying to take pictures of the type of clouds that Project Possum is primarily interested in, which is called noctilucent clouds, which is pretty much a cloud just really high up in the atmosphere, but it can only really be seen in like very northern places, hence why we were in Canada. And so we would have to like fly at like 3-4 in the morning. We'd go up, like try to take images from the airplane and then also from the ground. But when you got put on the ground team, man, it was rough because we literally drove like an hour and a half away to like the middle of a dirt road, set up like our little like camera on top of the car. And when I tell you the mosquitoes were terrible, like I was scared. Like I deal with mosquitoes all the time. Like it's not like it was new, but oh my gosh, they were like insane. They were intense mosquitoes. And so like the ground team was like kind of, the worst. And then also if you were on the ground team, you got back to the house later because it was an hour and a half drive. Whereas like if you were in the airplane, the airport was right down the road. So you could like come home and go to bed. So it was really fun. All of our sleep schedules were messed up, but we got to do it together. So
Wow, that sounds super fun and amazing. Um, you seem like you're working on several interesting and amazing projects. Please share your top 3 suggestions regarding time management.
Yeah, and regarding time management, I think that for me, I love like having a physical calendar. I have like my planner in front of me, and that's really like how I keep track of everything. I've definitely gotten into my planner more and more the more things I keep adding to my schedule. That's really kind of the biggest thing that keeps me organized. Of course, like I mean, my dad helps me a lot too. You know, he deals with a lot of stuff and keeps that organized and just kind of tells me what to do and when to have it done by. But yeah, I would definitely say having like a physical planner. Also, like honestly, just to-do lists. Like the amount of times I just write a to-do list to like just check things off in a day. And it's just like my daily things. Like it's not even anything crazy. Like on campus, when I go to campus today, you know, I have to remember to print this out at the library and go visit this office, and you know, just trying to remember everything. Once you start having more and more on your plate, that's when you just start to forget things. So I try to write everything down so I don't forget, or I will forget it. And then also for me, I've always tried to do a lot of different like school assignments, you know, relatively earlier in advance. That was something I did pretty often in high school as well, just because if there was some sort of opportunity that came up or something that I got to do, I didn't want to be like, oh my gosh, but I have to write a paper about, you know, whatever, that wasn't nearly as cool as like the opportunity. So I never really wanted like a school assignment to like hold me back from doing anything. So I tried to like either keep it relatively balanced or keep things done and in advance if something did come up. So that way, you know, I was able to kind of balance more. So those are kind of like the biggest things that I do. But yeah, it's definitely difficult sometimes. Some days are very overwhelming, but it's all about, you know, again, keeping that balance between like your all your work, but then also, you know, having time to relax, whether it's, you know, hanging out with my roommates or just, you know, having downtime as well. So keeps you sane.
Interesting. Do you believe the 1G rocket is possible in the future? A concept rocket capable of producing a constant thrust of 1 Earth gravity and could theoretically take us to Mars in 48 hours.
Yeah, I do think that, you know, the idea of like different sorts of engines and like that sort of thing, I do think that they're possible. You know, of course, we have like different ideas of different like types of rockets. I mean, like I was saying, you know, the new idea of like using plasma engines rather than, you know, the fuel burning engines that we particularly use now, of course, is going to add like a huge benefit. But yeah, I do think that we are going to be able to get rockets faster and faster. I mean, I think something that people want to see is like something that can move at the speed of light, and eventually we would want to get that fast. But yeah, I do think that it's all like stepping stones. We'll invent the engines that go a little bit faster and a little bit faster. I think we'll constantly push our own technologies and constantly come up with reasons to do them. So if like let's say Mars is the reason why we want to get to Mars in 48 hours, then yeah, I think that we're more than capable of thinking of something or that idea working. So
Interesting. In future Martian transportation systems for Martian settlers, do you believe a manned Martian helicopter will come first or a Martian plane, excluding integrity?
yeah, it's interesting because the idea right now of like some sort of flying vehicle on Mars is like of course, a very popular and new topic at the moment. Of course, right now with Mars's atmosphere, it's very different than, flying a helicopter or plane here on Earth. Since you have a completely different atmospheric composition, we can't just take one of our planes and use them on Mars. It has to be completely redesigned and rethought out. And so it adds such a next level of challenges. Whether like a helicopter or a plane will come first, I mean, I don't know. I don't necessarily. I guess a plane can hold more people. I guess it depends on what we want to do. I guess helicopters would probably be used more, of course, for like lower flying if you wanted to fly and go look at canyons and, fly lower to the ground, typically what we use helicopters for now, or planes for traveling more like long distance. I guess it's whatever we're needing on Mars in terms of Mars transportation, I guess whatever the people want, I guess, whether they want to fly in a helicopter, fly in a plane. I don't necessarily know if one's like easier to like deal with in terms of like flying in Mars's atmosphere. Yeah, I'm not sure. Of course, with Perseverance, we sent Integrity as like a helicopter, but that, we don't necessarily need a plane. We're not really holding anyone on Mars. So that's kind of why we went with more of like a helicopter design. So yeah, I'm not sure if one's necessarily better than the other.
Wow, that is very interesting. My next question is, who are your role models? If there are several, name one of them, and what do you like about that person?
Yeah, I mean, there's been several people who have helped, inspire me along the way. One in particular, kind of one of the biggest ones was astronaut Sandra Magnus. She was a female shuttle astronaut. I was pretty much able to meet her when I was around 9 or so. She was speaking at like this local fair that I went to about science, and so I was able to like ask her a few questions and chat with her, and she pretty much told me her story about when she decided to be an astronaut. And she was around 9 or so when she got interested, but she really made my dream feel so much more realistic because she was someone who had decided at a young age, put in the hard work, and here she was successful as an astronaut. And at the time, she was preparing to go on another mission, and so it was just really, really inspiring to see that it is a reality. If it is passion or something that you want to do, you can make it a reality. And so she definitely took something that was not realistic at all at the time and made it feel so much more achievable. So that was really amazing.
Wow, that is so amazing. What was your vision when you were 12 years old? Is it the same as your vision now?
It was definitely different. When I was 12, I was definitely thinking I would be going more towards like an astrophysics side of things. Now I hate physics. Things change. Physics in college is so difficult for no reason. But I think that definitely like my interest in space has changed a lot since then. And then of course I think that in general for me, of course, when I was younger, the whole dream was to be an astronaut, potentially on a mission to Mars, maybe something else. I wouldn't turn down something else. But I do think that the more I've learned about space, really the more I've realized I really just want to contribute to the space industry in any way that I can. I'll definitely apply as an astronaut. I mean, might as well. But I definitely think that I would totally just be happy whether that's working in astrobiology here on Earth, working in astrobiology, in space. I really just want to contribute with whatever it is I'm good at to try to help benefit the space industry in some way.
Interesting. So let's say we get to a point in time where we're constructing a Dyson sphere and we need now large amounts of, let's say, iron. Do you think the public would be okay with mining away mercury and potentially getting rid of an entire planet to make a Dyson sphere? Or would that, what is your opinion on that?
Yeah, I don't really know if that would go over too well. Especially sometimes space is so tricky to like explain to the general public. So even though it could be like a really good idea and like really beneficial, people are just not gonna or like not everyone is going to like understand the concept. It's already hard to justify space travel, to like an everyday person who isn't involved in space, because to an everyday person, they see us like launch a rocket, it blows up. Whereas like, it did have a purpose. I promise everything that we do in space has a purpose. It brings back a lot more money than we spend. In terms of all the technologies and stuff that we gain from it. But yeah, I do think that it's hard to get some of those ideas across. So yeah, I don't necessarily think the general public's gonna go for that one, but worth a shot, I guess.
Interesting. And when do you think we'll start asteroid mining?
Yeah, I think that I think we got really close to it. I think before Artemis, before all this, we originally had the Constellation program, which, did involve going back to the moon and going to Mars, but definitely focused a lot more on like asteroids as well. That kind of switched to go more towards like SLS and Artemis and a lot of those other ideas. I do think that we're going to get there. It just depends on what changes. I think one of the hard things about space is that, which, of course, it's different all over the world, but specifically like for NASA, every time a new president is elected, also a new NASA administrator is elected. So the NASA administrator is appointed by the president. So technically we could have a new administrator every 4 years. And so it's very hard, and space doesn't happen in 4 years. We can't come up with an idea, build a rocket, put some people on it in 4 years. It's just not possible. And so a lot of times we have a lot of struggles with space because we'll have one idea of these people wanting to do this in space, but then we get a new administration and they have a new NASA administrator, and now this administrator wants to do this, and it just kind of constantly slows down the process. And so it's all about trying to like find one thing, sticking to it, and like actually doing that and, achieving that. So, I mean, I don't think it's something that's super far away. But yeah, I think it just kind of depends on whatever the next person wants, I guess. They're always changing their minds, which isn't always the greatest in space. We need to kind of pick an idea and roll with it.
Wow, that is super interesting. We have a live question and it states, what are some of your long-term plans slash goals? What kinds, what kind of causes are you working towards in the long run that your position as a young astronaut today will allow you to contribute to?
Yeah, in terms of like long-term goals, I mean, of course, I have long-term goals of like applying to the astronaut selection process. That's a long-term goal. So I, of course, have to have a master's in order to be able to do that. But also, there's still like a lot of like stuff up in the air about that goal. Will that be with like a private company, or will that be with like a space agency, or what's that going to look like? In the next few years, that could totally change, and I could be applying to someone who I didn't necessarily think I would be applying to. So even though I guess I have long-term ideas, they aren't like super solidified just because they are so far away. But I guess other things like continuing to fly. I mean, I have my private pilot's license, but I do want to continue flying. The next step would be getting like my instrument rating, which pretty much just means you learn how to fly in like worse conditions, or like you're able to like fly through a cloud, because it's kind of dumb, like I have my pilot's license, but I'm not allowed to fly through a cloud. Like clouds are in the sky, you think that would be like one of the first things you learn, but it's not. You don't even learn it if you're a pilot. So it's kind of crazy, but definitely that would be a long-term goal. Flying kind of takes a while to actually build up all the hours and stuff. So that would be another long-term goal. And then I guess just in general, being involved in some sort of like astrobiology research in the near future would be something that I would want to be more a part of. Of course, like with my internship, I love all the stuff I'm doing, but I eventually will probably switch to something slightly more like science-based and more directly related to astrobiology.
Interesting. Quick question: when NASA begins to explore distant planets and other areas, what do you believe NASA's response would be if we found a hostile form of life?
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be interesting. Of course, like it's a possibility. On Mars, we have a lot of different ideas that there is some sort of bacterial life on Mars. So far we have found liquid water, we have found ice, we have found steam, we have found a lot of different environments that are really possible to have some sort of bacterial life growing on them. And I mean, that's something that, Perseverance is looking into. And then also once we get humans on Mars, we'll also, look for signs of life as well. But yeah, I mean, it's possible that that type of bacteria could be, hazardous to us. I mean, of course, we're going to take all of our precautions. We're not just going to like expose ourselves to it immediately. Like we're going to try to learn a little bit about it first. But I think, we'll try to identify it as something, that we're normally used to, but it could be something totally different. But, I guess in that case, I don't really know what we would do with it. Like, I don't know. I mean, I guess it's just bacteria, but like, I don't know, do we lock it up, or do we like just let it live on Mars? I don't, I guess that wouldn't be my department. I could figure out what kind of bacteria it is. Past that, I guess I'll leave it to someone else to figure out.
Very interesting. So our next question is, if let's say we're using nuclear reactors inside of rockets to power rockets for long duration missions, do you believe that there could be any like, what do you believe the astronauts' response would be, let's say if it goes critical?
Yeah, I mean, of course, like we've had several dangerous missions in space. It's something that we're used to, I guess, in a way. Ideally with space, the reason why it takes so long is because we try to make sure everything is as safe as possible. We want to test and retest and make sure everything's going great. And astronauts train for several years for their specific mission. So typically, if there's a problem, we've probably thought about it. We've probably trained for it. So typically, they would know like the protocol to go about. Of course, some things are unexpected. I mean, Apollo 13 is like a really great example of that. It was something that wasn't entirely expected, but it's not necessarily that the astronauts weren't trained, but it wasn't necessarily something they could just go out and fix. They can't just repair half a rocket, in their free time. And so it was something that was, problem solved. And I think that's one of the amazing things about space, is that there are so many people who are part of space. And, for example, let's say with Apollo 13, there were people day in and day out, trying all night long, trying to find any sort of solution, working through the problems over and over again until they found the right one that was going to work and that was going to get the astronauts home. And so, I think that that's something that will always be there with space. For example, like NASA has always said, their entire goals is always to bring whoever goes up back down. Of course, where they always are thinking about the astronauts first. And so I think that that's something that will continue with space, and having such a huge team down here on Earth. And then, of course, the astronauts in space as well. That's one of the amazing parts about the space industry is how big of a team really comes into play to do such amazing things.
Wow,
Interesting.
that is very interesting. I'm sure a lot of people would like to know what inspired you to be an astronaut. I understand that you were inspired by the TV show Backyardigans, but what turned that dream into reality?
Yeah, so I mean, looking back, I got interested in space when I was relatively young. I don't really remember everything too great from when I was that young. My dad does remember me asking a few questions about space, like, have people ever been to Mars before? Is space real? Of course, I didn't know anything at the time, but no one in my family really had any sort of space or science background. So my dad really didn't have that much to tell me. He told me a little bit about the missions to the moon, just from seeing a little bit about them, but yeah, he didn't really know too much, but that definitely sparked my interest. We referenced the episode of the Backyardigans, but yeah, that's kind of just our best guess as to what would have sparked that conversation. It's really the only place we can think of as to where I would have heard the word space or heard the word Mars to begin with, to even start asking questions. It's not like we talked about Mars, casually in the household all the time, but it was definitely something that was definitely out of the blue. But pretty much I started out by just learning more about space. By the time I went to space camp for the first time, which was when I was 7, it was definitely when I was pretty dead set on yeah, this is something I want to do. I didn't know entirely what I wanted to do. I mean, of course I had astronaut in my head, but it's not really a job, And so I was pretty much just interested in space and knew I wanted to do something in space. And that's really just because space camp was the first time I was able to learn all the information about space that I had been wanting to know. I was able to see life-size rockets, be around other people who are interested in space, and those. So that's really what sparked it all, and really solidified that goal for me. And then it was just looking for any sort of opportunities. There's no one way to get involved in the space industry. It's really all about what you're interested in doing. And so I had to figure out what it was I was interested in, how I was going to connect that to space, and what was I good at and what was I bad at, and just figuring out how that all really connected to space. And then looking after that, I was just always looking for opportunities, and that was really not even anything massive. It could be things that were really small, could have made a really big difference. And so I was looking for things that connected to the area of space that I was interested in, and a lot of the different opportunities, for example with Project Possum, they definitely came from just random events. I found out about Project Possum because I had gone to a camp about rockets and robots, and I had mentioned to one of the girls who was in charge of me, she was just a college student, she wasn't anyone fancy. I was like, hey, I like space, I want to do something with it one day. And I was talking about my interests, and she told me, hey, I think that there's something starting up at my university. I don't know what it is. I don't know if you can do it. I know nothing about it, but maybe you could call and find out a little something. And that turned into, all of these amazing opportunities of being able to get involved in real research. So I think it was one, looking for the opportunities, but also, speaking about my dreams and telling people what I wanted to do. Because of those conversations, it led to so many amazing opportunities that, I never would have saw coming. I would never assume that, a random college student could lead to all the incredible stuff through Project Possum, but it did. So I think that talking about my dreams was something that was a huge factor in it all.
Interesting. Another question is, how do you believe a Martian colony's government would be constructed? Because I could see like the first Martian colonies that we create, it would mostly be under a regular, there would be a commander. But what if we have like 50,000 people or more living on Mars? How would we structure that?
Yeah, the whole idea of like structure in space is very, very up in the air just because we don't have like a lot going on. Once you start talking like different countries and different like policies and all that, it gets very like wishy-washy in space. You can't like claim a planet, like no country could just go to Mars and be like, this is now, our planet or anything like that. So it does get tricky in a sense, especially, once we start the idea of colonizing on Mars. Do we have it where like Mars is just its own place and, that's just Mars and maybe we have some sort of structure, but, how do we decide what kind of government we want to run there or what kind of, life we want to have, it's going to be very different. Is it like Mars government, but then like how's it going to work? It's definitely very, very tricky. Typically, up like on the International Space Station, each like country kind of has their own module. So like the US has like a US module, Russia has like their module, ESA has their own, but it's not necessarily something that's like super like separated. Like if you want to go waltz into the Russian module and go check out and say hi what they're doing, there's nothing stopping you. Like it's all relatively like relaxed, but definitely talking like big picture and like now talking an entire planet, there's definitely going to be something that needs to be figured out. But yeah, that's also not going to be my job because that sounds way too difficult to figure out.
Wow,
Um,
that is really, really amazing. At this time, there um in my on my YouTube channel on my talk show Time to Shine, at the end of all my interviews, I do a fun and fast rapid fire round. So now I will proceed to ask you really interesting questions, and whatever comes to the top of your head, just say it out loud. So here we go. What is your dream job?
Astrobiologist.
What is your favorite hobby?
Painting.
What is the strangest thing you've ever eaten?
Uh, I will say probably, I mean, it was kind of part of the experience, but I was in Greece and I ordered a grilled cheese because I thought it was going to be a grilled cheese sandwich. No, they literally grilled a block of cheese and then served it to me on a plate. So that was, I mean, it's not really that strange. I mean, it was just cheese, but it was just a weird moment. I thought it was going to be a sandwich.
Oh, wow. What is your favorite thing about someone in your family?
I mean, I guess I love how, supportive and how much time my dad puts into helping me with my stuff. He's definitely, I call my dad like 5 times a day. So he does so much for me. So that's really awesome to have.
Wow, that's amazing. Describe yourself in 3 words.
Um, I would definitely say passionate, chaotic, and oh my gosh, I don't know, another word. I don't know, goofy, I guess. I'm a pretty goofy person.
If you could trade lives with anybody for one day, who would it be and why?
Elon Musk, no doubt about it. I want to live his life for one day. It would be amazing.
Wow, that's pretty cool. If you could talk to the president about one thing, what would you talk about?
Um, oh my gosh, I don't know. I'm so bad about like whatever stuff in politics means. I don't even know what I'd say. I mean, I guess I try to convince him to like give the space industry a bigger budget, but like even that, I don't even know like how he would like probably say something back and I'd be like, I don't know what that means, like probably talk about some policy. I get very lost in that, but yeah, I guess I would try to get space a bigger budget.
Okay, that's very cool. What word would you add to the dictionary if you could, and what would it mean?
Oh my gosh. Um I I have no idea. I'm like trying to invent a new word all of a sudden. I don't know. Well, okay, when we find the new bacteria on Mars, we'll name it something and then we'll add it to the dictionary. So
Okay,
whatever
that
that.
sounds cool. Yes. What have you done that you were the most proud of?
I would definitely say I'm most proud of being able to speak to kids and inspire them. You know, anytime I'm able to speak to a kid and see their face light up or see their excitement about space, or maybe I tell them about a job that they didn't know about and they're like, wow, that's so cool, I could do this, or maybe they gain that interest in space. It's always the best moment to see that and to see people get so excited.
Wow, that's definitely really, really awesome. And lastly, what advice did you get that was the most rewarding?
um I mean, I would definitely say that probably some of the advice that was really helpful was when I was around 9 or so. I had a conversation with Bill Parsons, and he used to be one of the Cape Canaveral directors down in Florida. So he was kind of like several spots below the president. He was pretty high up at some point, and so he didn't actually give that much advice, but he was pretty much saying, if you're interested and working in space, he kind of gave me a little bit of a path, yeah, you want to do whatever it is you want to do, study whatever you want to study, but how do you make yourself different? So he always kind of brought up the idea of standing out and being unique. Let's say I get a master's in astrobiology. How many other applicants are going to have that master's in astrobiology? Now what do I have next? If I have something else, how many other people are also going to be a pilot? Now what's next? And so he kind of broke it down to see how I could stand out and how I could be unique, and had me thinking about different ways to gain those opportunities, or things to add to the resume to help stand out. And it's really something that applies, if you apply to any job, of course you want to meet the requirements, but maybe have, one thing to help you stand out, to, make sure they're like, you're the one that I want. But yeah, he's definitely was the one that really got me thinking about trying to be different, be unique in any way. And whether that was doing as much as I could or doing something as weird as I could, it was all about trying to find something that would be different, which has definitely made a big impact.
Thank you, Alyssa, for coming to a network and speaking with us. It's been great having you here and having you answer our questions.
Yeah, thank you guys so much for your questions.
Thanks, Alyssa. It's been wonderful.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
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 Bye. That's Max. He's 5. Bye.
Bye, everybody.